Steve Paikin is a journalist, author, chancellor of Laurentian University, and host of TVO's flagship program, The Agenda. He has written several books on Ontario politics and recently released the book, I Am a Victor, the Mordechai Ronan story that he helped write. Steve, thanks for joining me today. You've been an author in terms of writing books on various premiers, and the latest one you're working on is one on Bill Davis. What led you to go in a different direction in terms of this particular book?
Had no plans to do a book on a guy who was a Holocaust survivor. It definitely has not, as you pointed out, not been part of my past where I've written, 5 books on politics and 1 on hockey. But about 23 years ago, I found myself in a small group on a bus in Poland with the man I ended up writing about. And he was one of those Holocaust survivors who never wanted to talk about his past. Too painful to relive those memories, too much of a burden to put on his family. I think it's, for those who are from families that have a Holocaust survivor, they certainly know what I'm talking about. And through my own just sort of curiosity and frankly stupidity about not knowing not to ask, I just started asking him questions as we were on this bus trip about to go to Auschwitz. And suddenly he started telling me things that he'd never told other family members who were on the bus with him. I guess because, I wasn't family, so it was easier for him to reply to me. 23 years later, he's now got to the point where he wants to tell his story because he feels it's his life's mission to educate people on the horrors of the Holocaust and to ensure that that kind of thing never happens again to anybody. And so he asked me to write up a book on it, and so we did.
Now, you did a documentary about 2 decades ago called Return to the Warsaw Ghetto. And how did that lay the basis for what eventually is this project?
Well, the bus trip I just told you about came in 1992, which was a year ahead of the 50th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. And essentially, I was part of this group. I was looking to do research for that documentary you just referred to. There were other people on the trip who were sort of looking to see whether or not Poland had changed enough to warrant putting a bigger trip together on the occasion of the 50th anniversary, where many more Canadians would come and sort of, share those experiences with their other family members. So that's why I was there. And the following year, I did go back on the occasion of the 50th anniversary, which would have been in 1993, and followed 3 families around. And obviously the parents of whom were survivors of the Warsaw Ghetto and their children who came with them were, in similar cases, hearing a lot of stories about their parents for the first time.
Now, your family experience hasn't involved the Holocaust, your parents?
Thank God. On both sides, everybody got out of Europe. I think my dad's side, turn of the 20th century. His mother came over during the Russian Revolution. On my mom's side, again, very early on. I think both my mom's parents were born in New York. So, yeah, we got out of Dodge early, thankfully.
So having that background, how did that impact you when you were now dealing with children of survivors and the survivors themselves?
I think in some respects it was, anybody who's Jewish, I hope, knows about the Holocaust and has some foundation upon which to have an understanding of what that was all about. But as you point out, I don't have a direct connection to it. And in some respects, I guess that made me, I don't say ideally positioned, but well positioned to write this book because I wasn't part of his family. And as a result, he could open up to me in a way that he clearly didn't want to for a whole bunch of reasons to family members. And the title of the book, I Am a Victor, I'm telling you, Marcel, when he said that, he went back to Auschwitz after that trip that we took. He went back with Jean Chrétien, who was Prime Minister at the time, the first ever Canadian Prime Minister to visit Auschwitz.
And he wrote a foreword to the book.
He did. He did the foreword for the book, yeah. And after the two of them went back to Auschwitz together, some member of the media asked Mordechai Ronan, who is the subject of the book, do you feel like a victim when you are here again, looking at all of this horror that you lived when he was a child of 11 or 12 when he got there? And he said, a victim? No, I am a victor. The first time I came here stuffed in a boxcar, as a child, and now I return to this place in the limousine of the Canadian Prime Minister. I am a victor. And it was just a unbelievably powerful thing to him to say. And what a great statement, right? He's not allowed that period of his life to define the next 7 decades of his life. He overcame. You know, he went to Israel, he got married, he raised a family, set up a small business in Toronto. He's 83 and still alive. And it's a horrifying story with a very happy ending.
Now, Chrétien, in the foreword, actually says this was probably one of the most powerful incidents in his career as a prime minister.
Absolutely right, and I know when he said that, I was a little taken aback because this is a man, as you know, 40 years in public life. I mean, he's seen it all, and you know, he said he could count on the fingers of one hand the number of incidents during his prime ministership, during his entire career in public life, where he was, you know, moved to tears, and that would have been one of them. And when I asked him to write the foreword, remember, I was asking him to write about events that were almost 20 years in the rearview mirror. And in some respects, you know, a man's done thousands of events in his life.
Absolutely.
I thought I'd have to remind him about what was going on. He remembered everything about it. He remembered the trip. He remembered Mordechai saying in the car on the way into Auschwitz, "Prime Minister, I can't do this. We have to turn the car around. I can't do this." And Chrétien, who, as you know, regardless of what you think of his politics, is just unbelievably good at connecting with the average guy. He grabs Mordechai's hand and he says, "Mordechai, we're going to get through this together." And that just set him at ease, and you know, off they went and they did the event together, and it's all described in the foreword which Mr. Chrétien did.
Now, we've had these anniversaries, the 50th, the 70th, and in a couple of years, possibly a 75th anniversary. But there's fewer and fewer survivors.
Well, that's the scary thing. And this year, I think there were a few hundred who went. You know, when they got together for the 50th, there are obviously a few thousand survivors who went. So, yeah, you're right. Before long, there's not going to be anybody to go because all the survivors will be gone. That's, I think, what's motivating Mordechai more than anything, is that he does not want people to be able to say, after all the survivors have gone, that this didn't happen, or that his life wasn't his life. And so it's become his mission to get that book done and to have his experience there in black and white. And, you know, this book's going to get into schools and into libraries, and you know, he wants to get the word out that this can't happen again. The world's got to make sure this never happens again to anyone. And that's the key message here. Never mind to the Jewish people, who obviously he would care about being Jewish, to anyone. No ethnic group can suffer like this ever again. It's just wrong. And so he's doing his bit to get the word out, to educate people on how a totally modern, you know, so-called learned, intelligent society can just be overtaken by madness, and we see the horrifying results.
But we're seeing in Europe and in other places a rise again of anti-Semitism, people denying Holocaust ever existed. How do we get over that hurdle?
Education, 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 and after that, more education. We keep talking about it, we keep teaching it, we keep repeating the stories, we keep making sure that they aren't the only people getting a narrative out there. And I must tell you, one of the things I'm heartened about, and who knows how long this is going to remain, you know, online and in the ether for people to watch in years to come. Yes, all of those right-wing reactionary parties do have a small percentage of the vote in the various countries in Eastern Europe, and I guess in France too, that they're running in. But nobody's won. Through the democratic ballot, none of them has yet to win an election, and I find some comfort in that. And I hope, you know, I hope the good guys can continue to get the word out so that people don't buy into this ugly narrative of that we've seen in the past that can lead to cataclysm.
Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. I was joined by Steve Paikin, author, journalist, and host of The Agenda, and his new book is I Am a Victor, The Mordechai Ronen Story.